Okay, this is our second session on getting input from the user using the JOptionPane class. Our first session was homework that we just did. That was chapter 216. And so really to do these notes in this video the best, you need to open up chapter 216 file, Java file, your first session on JOptionPane and user input, and then change the class name to JOptionPane numeric data, because now we're going to add another element to this, and do a save as. And then you should take out your JOptionPane notes from before and be prepared to make more notes. So the best thing would be for you to follow along in JGrasp if you can, along with this video. So let's go ahead and get started. And also, just to add, there are announcements on the class activities link, these that talk about these things right here. And so at any time you might need to pause. There are going to be times where it'll be good for you to pause and just try to type things yourself to write program. So let's see how this goes. So at this time you should have your JOptionPane or your chapter 216 assignment out, but renamed to be JOptionPane numeric data right here that I have. I have it at A for another reason. You don't need to have the A there. What we're going to do is we're going to take a look at some things. First of all, some kind of adjustments from last night's homework. And also, as we go through this today, what I had the class do is I told them that we need to refrain from copying and pasting in today's activities, but we need to be typing everything out because we want to type from memory as much as you can to force yourself to remember things. Of course, you still use your notes, you use those as a resource, but just make sure they're not the place you go to first. So there's a couple of things here we're going to make adjustments on. First of all, make sure that you have a blank line after the import statement, as you can see right here. Again, anytime you need to stop the video or pause the video and then do what you need to do and then come back, because I'm not going to sit here on the video and wait for you to do certain things. The next thing that you need to do as far as an adjustment is let's make the data type on the same line as this show input dialog statement. So we're declaring and initializing at the same time, and so let's adjust our code to do that. Of course, the name of the variable that you had is fine. It doesn't have to be this. The next thing we want to change is we want to put the argument of the show input dialog method, which this is a method, and it's inside the parentheses, if you remember, is an argument. We want to put that parentheses and argument here on the next line down and line it up with the capital J of JOptionPane. Right, what this is going to do is allow you to keep your text within the window so that you don't have to scroll from right to left, which is not very fun. And you can also do that with the JOptionPane show message dialog statement. And so go ahead and put that on the next line down and line that up with the capital J of JOptionPane, and this will keep things in your window. The other thing you might want to do is make sure to compile this and make sure that you don't have any errors at this time. If you do, they need to be fixed so that as we go on you'll see the errors that I want you to see, because there will be errors today as we go through this. So what I need you to do now is, this will be a good time after you see these directions to pause and do this yourself. So after your show message dialog program statement that you currently have up, ask users for the age of their school and store their response in a variable named age of school. and then add a dialog box at the end that will include the age of the school in a sentence. Just keep it simple, short sentence that includes the age of the school in that particular sentence. So go ahead and do that and then come back. Okay, so what you should have done, what I would be expecting you to do, is maybe put an int as a data type and then the age of school equals JOptionPane.showInput dialog. That would be the common response, and maybe you did that and then you compiled it and saw an error and you fixed it yourself, which would be cool if you did that, because last night we did talk about how that the input of the user from a show input dialog box is always a string. It always is a string, and so therefore we name every variable that's going to store input directly from the show input dialog box as a string. So what we want to do here is, whether you caught your error or not, what we want to do is we want to write down the message or the error message that happens if you were to do this. And so let's go ahead and compile this and see what the error message is. And so that what you should write down on your notes is this. So of course this is the line 21 is where we're having problems, 2021, and it says incompatible types. So your error message you should write down on your notes is that you have an incompatible types. The string cannot be converted to int. Okay, so what that is saying here is, let's say that the user were to see this input dialog box and it says what's the age of your high school. Let's say that they typed 10. Well, that 10 is not a 10 as you think of a 10. It's not an int, an integer or a whole number. It's actually a string, because as we said before, the user input through a dialog box is a string. And so if you have a memory location set up over here that looks like this, and it's going to have age of school, and I'm just going to put age because it's too hard to write this with this little pen thing. So age ... and this is an int. And so what happens is the user types a 10, but it's not a 1010, it's a string 10. And so the compiler tries to store this in the variable age of school. But you remember we said that the value must obey the data type. So the data type here is at the door of the memory location and says, who are you? What is your type? And the value says, I'm a string. And so the int says, you must go away because I don't accept strings. And so the string cannot be stored in here. So that's why you get the error message incompatible. They don't get along. Strings and ints don't get along. A string cannot be converted to an int automatically. And so that's why we got to change the int to a string. So if you currently have the age of school as an int, go ahead and change it to a string, recompile it, and everything then should work just like normal. And then come back to this. So the next thing that we want to do is we want to ask the users, and we've already actually covered this here, so we don't have to do this. We already did this. Now ask the user for the annual tuition amount of the school, and then write another message in a dialog box that uses the annual tuition in a sentence. Call the variable tuition. Okay, so go ahead and do that, and then come back to the video. Okay, so what you should have done regarding tuition, of course, you would, even though you're asking for a decimal or money, which would have a decimal in it, we're still going to call tuition string, so hopefully you did that as we learned up here. And so now that even though they might type a decimal in there, it would be stored as a string still. Alright, now what I should have said is make sure to include the $sign, but that's no big deal. Okay, so now the next thing that we need to do is we need you to change the class name of the JGraphs file that you currently have open to JOptionPane calculations and do a save as, and then delete all the code in the main method. So go ahead and do that and then come back to the video. What you should have just done is you would name it JOptionPane calculations and did a save as so that the previous document has not been lost, and then everything in the main method is deleted. Alright, so then we're ready to go now. And so now the next thing what I need you to do, and this will take us a little bit more time, is we need you to write a program with the following criteria. Use dialog boxes to get the following information or input from the user: how many kittens they want to purchase, we'll say number of kits, the cost per kittens, cost per kit, less the sign, and declare on the same line. So when you declare the number of kits, declare it and also assign it the input of the user. And then same thing with the cost per kittens. Initialize the variable kitty cost, and that's going to store the total cost of the kitten purchase. Okay, do this like we already know how to do, and then finish with a message dialog that box that announces the cost of their order, and type the $sign in there. Don't use the decimal format, we're not going to do that yet. So go ahead and do that and then come back to the video and we'll see how we did. Okay, so this is what you should have done. Is, of course, you would have everything, all the input dialog and all that kind of stuff in there, or the import statement for the JOptionPane. But what happens is you would declare number of kits as a string, because you know that the input is going to be stored as a string. And then you would do the same thing for cost per kit. Is you go, okay, you know that's a string, so that the input's a string, so you have to store it in a string. Then you have your calculation like you normally would, and then the message. So this is what you should have. And if you don't have this, then go ahead and make adjustments. What I should have told you beforehand is that you when you do this, if you do it correctly the way we've learned so far, you're going to get an error message and you're not going to know what to do with it yet. So I should have told you that beforehand. So right now what we're going to do is we're going to see what the problem is. So what we want to do is we want to write down the error message that's going to happen here. And so we're going to go hit the compiler. And so what you need to write down is basically this is the error message that's going to happen, that if you don't convert your numeric data to answer strings before they get stored. And so here's what's going to happen. The problem is on line 19, it says, which is right here that's highlighted. And it's because you have bad operand types. So an operand, if we remember, is when you have two sides of an arithmetic operator. Okay, this is trying to operate a product, and the two operands are number of kits and cost per kits. And so we're talking about their data types. Well, the data type of the num of kits is a string, and same with cost per kit. So we're taking a string, trying to multiply it by a string. And it says this is bad operand types for binary operators. And so a binary, bi means two, so we have two, an operator, a binary operator is operating arithmetically on two operands, and so that's what's going on here. It says the first type is a string and the second type is a string. Well, that's what we just said. And the reason that doesn't work is because it's like trying to multiply Katie times Kathy. You know, you can't multiply strings together. It doesn't work, doesn't make sense. So in order to get a double, of course, you realize that at least one of your operands has to be a double, and they both have to be numeric. Or they have to be something like an integer or a double. And so these are numeric data, but the problem is maybe they're 7, but it's not a regular 7, it's a 7 that's a string. And maybe this is 422. Well, it's not really 422 as we know it. It's actually a string. And so it's not going to work. So make sure you write this down if you haven't already, this particular message. And let's see what we're going to do next. Okay, what we're going to do now, you don't necessarily have to write down, because in tonight's homework, chapter 217, you'll actually get a printout, or you'll see on a document the information. So this would be good to either just watch or to actually do the things I'm doing in your JGrasp program, so you get to experience it and see how it works. So what we're going to do is first of all, we know that the num of kits and cost per kit have to be ints and doubles, and so we're going to go ahead and change num of kits to int, because you don't buy part of a kitty cat. And then we're going to have the cost per cat is going to, typically you can have cents in it, so we're going to call it a double. Now remember though, this is still if the user types I'm going to buy 7 cats, it's still a string, and it still can't store the 7 as a string in here because this is an int. Strings can't convert to ints automatically. And so here's what happens. We are going to type in here the name of a wrapper class, and so this will be on notes later on. So type in integer capitalized dot parse int. Alright, so integer is the name of a class. Okay, now I just got interrupted, so I don't remember where I was at exactly, but anyways, we've got integer.parseInt. Integer is a wrapper class, it's capitalized, and parseInt is a method, and the parseInt from the integer wrapper class is going to convert the string to an int. And so what we want to do, as a method normally does, we want to put parentheses, so parenthesis here, and then we're going to put a parenthesis at the very end. Alright, so you've got those two parentheses. So this entire JOptionPane.showMessage or showInput dialog box and its argument are all within the parentheses of the parseInt method. And so basically what this does is this takes let's say that the user types a 7 and they're going to buy 7 kitties, and it's a string, and then the parseInt, if you remember when we did the cast operator, if you had a cast operator and it was acting on a 7.4, let's say, it would act on it and change it and becomes a 7. Well, that's kind of what this does. It acts on a string, and now it becomes a regular 7. And then the 7 now gets stored in num of kits because it's an int, and that's what this holds. Alright, now let's try one more. Let's go to the doubles. Now you have a double wrapper class. Double.parse double, and then we're going to add the parentheses at the beginning and at the end. And so what this does, let's say that the user says, well, I'm paying $7.25 for each cat or kitten, but it's a string that can't go into the double variable, and so the parse double method, which is part of the double, an object of the double wrapper class, the 7.25 as a string becomes a 7.25 as a double. And now that can go inside this variable because that's what this variable stores, is doubles. So go ahead and then, well, just really quick, then so that means this is an int times a double, and so we then should be able to do a compile, and hopefully there's no errors. So there's no errors, and then when we run it, you can enter, let's say, 7 kittens for $7.25. They get stored in there, and it does the calculation, and there you have it. Alright, that's how it works. You are now set for tonight's homework.